Welcome to this DevOps.com workshop brought to you by Techstrong and AWS. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting workshop ahead, but first I have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. First, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of this workshop or you'd like to follow along at a later point in time, rewatch, share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts about today's workshop, we want you to send those in using the comments tab or the chat tab that will be on the right side of your screen. And finally, before we close out, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around till the very end. So the title of our workshop is Boost Your Serverless Application Availability with AIOps on AWS. And joining me is Jonathan Vogel, Developer Advocate at AWS. And we also have Alyssa Lee with us, supporting us in the chat. So if you see her answering some of your questions, she's with us. So Jonathan, Alyssa, thank you both for being here with us. Jonathan, why don't you take it away from here?
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located in the world. My name is Jonathan Vogel, and I'm a developer advocate at AWS. I appreciate the nice introduction, Cody, and I'm also joined by my colleague, Alyssa, who looks to help our customers be successful in this space. So I'm glad to see that she's joined us. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Alyssa.
Great. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Yes, thanks everyone for joining. I am the Customer Success Lead for Guru Services, so I'll be here to help answer any questions you may have about DevOps Guru just in the chat as Jonathan goes through his presentation.
Awesome, Alyssa. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in here. We'll get started with our agenda. We're gonna begin today by discussing some of the what and why of trends regarding modernization of applications. We're going to take the story forward and introduce AIOps. We're going to talk about some use cases, get into a live demo, and then here soon, everyone that would like to choose this option can get hands-on with AIOps on AWS today. We're going to give you the opportunity to get hands-on with a workshop after this short presentation, and you'll have a temporary AWS account where you can actually kind of have a nice little sandbox environment and send some traffic, make some changes, and see some cool insight with AIOps. So we thought it might be helpful to kind of touch on my own experience because I think some of y'all could resonate with some of these challenges that we see here, whether you're an operations person or you're a developer that also is responsible for operating what you build. So I personally, I studied computer science, and I've been working in this space of IT and software development since 2007. And fast forward to today, after having been a professional software developer over a decade, now I'm a developer advocate at AWS. And one of my favorite aspects of the role is to improve people's lives. So whether, as I mentioned, if you're an ops person, perhaps you're a DevOps engineer or just an operations person that is responsible for that high availability, or you're a developer that has to build it, I hear more and more from you all that this can feel like a 24/7 job. And so I'll take a quick poll in the chat by way of a yes or a +1. Has anyone been paged in the middle of the night or had to address some kind of IT or software issue at an inconvenient time, like dinner with the family? So I can see some of you out there have experienced this. I can say for myself, I have, and I want you to take a moment and reflect on that time. Did you go down the wrong path? Did you know who to call if you didn't know what to do to fix it? Did you find yourself looking at perhaps some anomalous behavior in the application and spend 20, 30 minutes going down a path that you realized was the wrong direction, and you had to turn around. And meanwhile, production is still down. There could be some real business impact here, and realize that was actually a symptom of the issue and not the actual cause. So I hear more and more from folks about this alarm fatigue, but among other things, there's more data, and being able to correlate that can be difficult. So that leads us into kind of our IT workflow. We have all these applications, and we're seeing a greater shift towards microservices-based architectures. So you have apps, and now you have a ton more apps. And all of those are producing metrics, logs for our microservices. Perhaps you have some trace information in there to know that you hit this API and then it's actually invoking something down the line. And it's nice to have that trace data to be able to determine what could be causing a problem if your customers are having issues. And all of these require manual setup and manual configuration of alarms, of dashboards. This is a heavy lift to configure. And you do this, and then what happens? Software isn't static. Software changes. So your resources change. Perhaps you're adding a resource or you're removing a resource. Now you have to go and then update your alarms and dashboards accordingly. And you also could have new traffic patterns as well. So that's one of those challenges that it's always a struggle to keep up. What about what you're not looking for? Perhaps there's some things that you're not seeing, what you don't know, or potential gaps in coverage. And we're also seeing more DevOps cultures maturing, and there's this pressure from the business down to the builders to accelerate and improve business agility and deliver more faster. And so you have notifications configured. So when an issue does occur, someone gets notified. Perhaps you might be that one paged at 2 a.m. on the weekend, and someone has to manually determine, is that alarm really valid, or is it a temporary hiccup? What if you could use AI to add some additional intelligence to parse through the noise and only surface the appropriate signals, using AI to detect behaviors that deviate from normal operating patterns so that you can identify operational issues more intelligently, also known as AIOps for monitoring. So this is where AIOps comes in. With AIOps, you can automatically analyze trends to set and update alarm thresholds dynamically, auto-detect issues that you may not be looking for, and differentiate that signal from all the noise, and even provide context to your operations teams when they get notified of a potential issue. So we'll take a look at what AWS has to offer that can help you automate without the need of creating and maintaining your own intelligence and models, helping you avoid the heavy burden and start thinking about how you can utilize a few services within AWS to easily start using AI for your IT operations. So let's take a step back and assess, what are you doing with AWS today? So you have input signals with your AWS resources. I'll give an example of a serverless application. That's the when you get hands-on here in a little bit, you'll actually be given a serverless application. And we'll kind of get into that architecture here momentarily. But let's take a component of that serverless architecture and talk about the compute function with Lambda. So you turn on a Lambda function, and out of the box, when that Lambda is invoked, it's going to generate CloudWatch vended metrics. So CloudWatch vended metrics are these default metrics or out of the box metrics that come for you on your behalf when you turn on a Lambda function. So with Lambda, you turn it on and you're getting things like number of errors, invocations, latency. These are all some examples of some operational metrics that are already happening when you turn on that Lambda. And you might, in addition to those CloudWatch vended metrics for Lambda as one example, you might have custom metrics. Whenever you're making changes with CloudTrail, you have a whole history of all your API calls. In the case of microservices, you might have your X-ray trace data configured. Perhaps you're a relational database user on the cloud today, and you have RDS Performance Insights, or PI, enabled in your ecosystem. And so all of those metrics, and you configure alarms, and you create these dashboards, and you have automated ticketing. But you realize scaling with this can be near impossible. And that's where adding an AI ML layer, Amazon DevOps Guru, is able to augment your IT ops and surface signal from noise. DevOps Guru is fully managed, no machine learning skills required. The service is continuously analyzing and consolidating streams of operational data from multiple sources, including CloudWatch metrics, config, CloudFormation, X-ray, providing you with this single console dashboard to search for and visualize anomalies in your data. DevOps Guru is using pre-trained ML models informed by years of experience from Amazon.com and AWS operational excellence. These models can identify anomalous application behavior, such as increased latency, error rates, resource constraints, and then surface the critical issues that could cause potential outages or service disruptions. So this is a nice kind of introduce, what is this AIOps? What can DevOps Guru do for me? Or for you rather. This is kind of a quick overview of its capability. So, continue to reiterate, it's fully managed. You don't need to set anything up besides enabling it. And if you choose, you can do some minor configurations such as setting your application boundaries. Again, you don't need any kind of machine learning skills. Once you provide it with that information, you can, for instance, enable it across all your resources or just specific resources. It then automatically starts monitoring the data and the metrics to understand your application's behavior. And then there's this baseline period. That's where DevOps Guru is baking what's going on with your application to kind of get a sense of what is expected behavior. And this baselining is what is helping the models understand in the future what it might identify as anomalous behavior. And this can take some hours, up to 24 to 48 hours for the baselining. And then as you add new resources, so going back to that heavy burden from the previous slide, you're going to remove resources, you're going to add them. You typically would have to manually set up alarms and dashboards. DevOps Guru is going to automatically start detecting changes. So you add a new Lambda function, automatically start ingesting data from that new resource, this operational streams of operational data. No need to set up any kind of additional monitoring and alarms. And so DevOps Guru helps reduce that noise and focus on the high severity issues with detailed insights, ultimately helping you provide a quicker MTTR, or mean time to resolution. We want to help minimize the time it takes. Let's say your application is down, the time it takes to bring it back up. You want to make that as minimal as possible for high availability. So I'm going to jump right into our use case that we're going to actually get hands on here very shortly. I just wanted to kind of help explain this architecture before you all get hands-on, as well as we're going to peel back a little bit about what's happening with DevOps Guru under the hood. So we'll start with a typical serverless application. This looks identical to the application that we are going to be using today. Both API gateway can serve. Basically, what's going to happen is in this architecture, you have a person, a customer call an API, and it's going to be targeting Amazon API Gateway. When Amazon API Gateway is targeted, it's then going to in turn invoke this Lambda function. That's the compute element that's going to respond to the request from the API. In this case, it doesn't always have to be the case, but in this case, there's a database here. It's a DynamoDB NoSQL database behind the Lambda function. So when you call the API, it's going to invoke Lambda. When Lambda is invoked, it's going to then call the DynamoDB table to get some data. And we're going to actually modify how DynamoDB is configured today in the workshop. And then we're going to start sending some traffic, a lot of traffic to this API. And what's going to happen is all of these resources are going to be generating metrics. So you got API Gateway, it's throwing 500 errors. You have Lambda, it's throwing its own errors. Then DynamoDB is being throttled. Imagine it's that situation where you're paged at 2 a.m. on a Sunday and you're seeing all this stuff broken and you're not sure what is the symptom and what is the root cause. Ultimately, if this is a true production down situation where there could be some real business impact, you want to make sure that you reduce that mean time to resolution and solve the problem as quickly as possible. So that's what's going to happen in today's workshop. You got all those components failing, and you'll get to see what it might look like to address it. And so that's the power of adding Amazon DevOps Guru. Using its ML-based detectors, it's monitoring your application by ingesting operational data coming from CloudWatch, CloudTrail. In this example that you're going to see, you're actually going to get hands-on with today, is DevOps Guru is checking the relevant events on CloudTrail and comparing them with operational metrics from CloudWatch. And so based on that data, when it detects the anomaly, it's creating an insight, presenting all the relevant metrics so that the operator or yourself could quickly figure out what might be the root cause. And although you see all these resources failing, DevOps Guru is able to cut through the noise and provide the recommendation of rolling back this DynamoDB table update. So before we get hands-on, we're almost there. We're gonna just kind of, often folks will say, I need to understand a little bit more about how this works under the hood. So you have these different metrics that are being consumed. For instance, CloudWatch vended metrics, these default CloudWatch metrics, or in the case of RDS, you might have performance insights data coming in. These are input signals for the ML models that are ingested by DevOps Guru. It's analyzing that and looking for anomalous behavior based on the machine learning models from Amazon.com and AWS Operational Excellence. And then we talk about how you can enable the service and specify specific application boundaries. So one example of that is by CloudFormation. So we have a lot of folks using infrastructure as code today. Pretty cool component of DevOps. And a lot of them on AWS are using CloudFormation. And so you can specify specific CloudFormation stacks to be monitored. That's one component of DevOps Guru in terms of aggregating your application and monitoring specific resources. But the other component is today we're going to push a CloudFormation change. And when we start seeing some anomalous behavior after that CloudFormation change, DevOps Guru is going to associate, hey, it looks like you changed your infrastructure. And now the resources that you modified we're seeing some anomalous behavior. There might be a correlation here between this CloudFormation deployment and these resources. So that's going to be a cool thing to kind of show you the context around just providing more enrichment information to help you make a better decision more quickly. And so Amazon DevOps Guru is taking all this in, producing an insight. An insight's made up of these components of the metrics, enrichment data. So for instance, that CloudFormation change, and then AWS recommendations. So not only is it just saying, here's what's going on, it's saying, here's what's going on, and you might consider these actions to take to solve it. And then finally, this is not a solution that is intended to be put up on a screen and monitored all the time. It's meant to bring to you the information when you need it. So we recommend customers configure some kind of mechanism to be automatically notified. And there's different ways to do this. One mechanism, and you'll see this when I show how to enable the service towards the end, you can configure SNS or simple notification service to, when an insight's generated, to automatically bring that to you. We have integrations with, for instance, AWS Systems Manager, if anyone's using Ops Center today, or perhaps you're using a third party like PagerDuty or Atlassian Ops Genie for your notifications. We have some nice integrations there as well. All right, we're almost at the hands-on workshop part of this session today. We just launched some new proactive insights. And so I thought it might be neat to see what those look like. And you kind of get a teaser of what DevOps Guru does before you actually get your hands on it yourself. All right, so this is the AWS console. And from the AWS console, conveniently for me, I have DevOps Guru as a recently visited service, but perhaps you would go up into this search bar from the console and type in DevOps Guru, and you can click on it and it brings you here if you already have the service enabled. Later on, after y'all get hands-on, if folks want to see how to get started with this, I'll show you what it looks like. But this is what you'd see if you've had it monitoring. And in this case, we have some insights happening. So we have, and today what you'll be experimenting with is a reactive insight. So the application's, in fact, having some problems, meaning your customers might be having a bad experience, and it's reacting to that and saying, hey, I think you should look at these things because your customers might be having a bad time. Proactive insights, on the other hand, the intent behind proactive is to let you know ahead of having really bad times for your customer. So I'm going to click on that proactive insight. It's going to bring me to the insights page, and you can see I got some ongoing activities here. On the left, you'll see reactive, which you'll be messing with here in a few minutes. But proactive is what I'm going to showcase today. And we actually just launched these at the San Francisco Summit in April, just the other month. And so I wanted to do a quick demo of that. So Lambda is subject to what are called cold starts. So if you're invoking a Lambda function, it's going to have to stand up the right resources to respond to that request. And if the resources aren't available, it's going to have to turn it on. You know, it's serverless. It's able to scale on demand. But if you don't have enough what is called provisioned concurrency, meaning in essence, instead of cold Lambda functions, warm Lambda functions that are ready to respond quickly, your customers might be experiencing high latency. So imagine you're an e-commerce business and your checkout function is backed by Lambda, and you have folks wanting to check out because there's occasional spikes where there's a lot of checkout activity. And so you've done the right thing by configuring provision concurrency. And here in this example, we've done that. But what's happening is we're pushing up on that threshold. So we're seeing some instances where customers are still able to check out, but the latency at times can be a little high because of these cold starts. And it would be preferential to perhaps consider increasing that provision concurrency to make sure we mitigate such a circumstance in the future. So here it's in this case, it's one metric that it's ingesting. And you can see at the top here, we can click easily to go right down to view recommendations, but I'm just going to scroll to our metric here and we see, let's see, this is the provision concurrency. This is the a different example that I'll show next. So for the provision concurrency here, the one metric we're looking at is our provision concurrency spillover invocation. So this is kind of like pushing up on that threshold, or in this case, occasionally spilling over. And it's able to bring you this view of, hey, this metric is anomalous. And if you want to take a look at the data, here it is in a timeline view. In addition, you have the time reported, you have the relevant Lambda function as well. And then you can scroll down and see your recommendation, and that you probably should bump this up to make sure that your customers are having a better experience. And conveniently, the Lambda function in question, this is all aggregated into this single pane of glass. So that's one example with provision concurrency. In this case, you're spilling it over or you're pushing up on that threshold, and you want to be notified so that you don't continue that circumstance for your customers. And that's arguably a performance thing or a high availability thing, and that's great. We're often talking about how do we maintain operational excellence? How do we have as high as possible availability, preferably 100% availability? How do we reduce MTTR, reduce that mean time to resolve? And so those are common themes around AIOps, but there's another, and that's cost savings. So imagine a solution that you can enable, and it's going to save you some money. Customers often love hearing this, so I figured I'd give a quick demo of this use case. So here we have a DynamoDB table, not a Lambda function, another serverless example, and our table rights are underutilized. So what's happening is we've configured in this DynamoDB table additional write capacity. And DevOps Guru has been monitoring that resource. And often customers will just prefer to over provision, even if it means they're going to spend more money, because they want to err on the side of, I'd rather make sure that everything's going to be good and it's going to work for my customers. But DevOps Guru is seeing this pattern of, I think you've been over provisioned for a while. And if I look at the data here, you're only consuming one write capacity sustained over time. So if you scroll down here, it's going to recommend you bump this up. Now, this is a very simple example where we have a configuration. Let's see if we go into our DynamoDB table. Imagine this at scale. This is a very simple example, but from DevOps Guru, we can click on the resource in question. From actions, we can edit the capacity, and we can see our write capacity is configured at 5 right now. But imagine this could be a much higher number. There could be hundreds or even thousands of DynamoDB tables. And you can see there's actually an estimated cost right here. It's about almost $3 or $3 USD. Let's say we were to bring this down to 2. That's cutting our cost in half. And at scale, that money could really add up. So there's an example of how by modifying that capacity, you can potentially save some money. And that's exactly what DevOps Guru is recommending here, is to have the provision throughput be 2, because you're only using 1 based on what it's seeing. All right. So that's a quick little demo. So now we can actually get hands-on with this. And so to do that, I'm going to share a couple things in the chat. So there's a dashboard for Event Engine that you'll need to open, as well as the workshop URL that you'll follow is here. And so I'm going to share a couple things, and I'll make sure we'll give some moments here to make sure everyone's able to get connected. Basically, this is the workshop we're doing today. This is the link of the workshop URL, which I have shared in the chat. And this is the mechanism you'll use to get a temporary AWS account. And to do that, you'll put in this hash code. And what I'll ask everyone to do is follow the workshop instructions. The workshop instructions are pretty helpful in explaining what to do. So we can see from the main page here, there's kind of an intro, a lot of which I've I'd mentioned in this presentation. So if you came late, it would be helpful for you to definitely read all this in case you missed anything. But rest assured, if you've been listening throughout, we've kind of covered this introduction. And then it walks you through the getting started, which is setting up or rather getting your account vended to you via Event Engine. And so that's what this looks like. Let's see. I guess if people can give me people can give me a thumbs up, anyone, or a +1, you're able to get to this workshop URL, and you're able to open the Event Engine page here. All right, I'll have to assume, unless people are struggling, please let us know in the chat. What we can do now is I'm going to walk you through what it's going to be to get one of these accounts vended to you. So there's a couple options here, folks. I've provided you this Event Engine URL, and I provided you the workshop URL. So if you choose, you're welcome to just go full steam at this at your own pace. I am going to do my best to walk through this slowly. If folks want to follow along with me, so as I do a step, you do a step, that's perfectly cool too. If you do get stuck and you're not able to get support immediately, rest assured there'll be a point in the workshop where everyone here is waiting a few minutes or some minutes for that insight to be generated. So that's a great time for me to help unblock anybody if anyone is stuck. Additionally, these accounts will be available for a little while after this. So if you have some kind of priority thing come up and you got to leave, also rest assured, go ahead and follow these steps to get your account if you can. And that way you have it locked in because there are a limited number of accounts that we can vend today. So if for some reason we get a lot of people here, there'll be a cap. But I think we can get at least most, if not everyone, up and running today. And then you can actually just make a note in a document and then of what the instructions are, and then you could follow at a later time if that's preferred. So with those options, I'll go ahead and walk you through what it looks like to get an account. So I'm going to put in my hash into this Event Engine dashboard. I'm going to accept the agreement here. I recommend this one-time password. There's a few different mechanisms to get an account here, but let's all just do the one-time password for convenience. So I'm gonna actually type in my email address, and this email address you see here is my work email. I would love to hear from you all even after this. So please, if you feel comfortable, you'd like to make note of that email. It's also going to be at the end of the workshop. I'll share it again, but you're more than welcome to reach out anytime. I love hearing from customers. So I'm going to hit send passcode, and it takes maybe about a minute or so to pull this up. So while I'm waiting for that email, is anyone in the chat, anyone out there listening that's trying to get Event Engine, trying to get to the workshop, having any trouble, please let us know in the chat. We're happy to help you. Cool. I don't see anyone struggling in the chat. So what I'll do, I'm going to go back while I'm waiting for this passcode. I'm going to go back to my console, and I'm logged into an AWS account. And I suspect some of you folks listening already have an AWS account you're logged into. You'll want to log out of that. It's okay if you haven't. You'll kind of get forced to log out of it, but you might see a window that says, hey, you're already logged in. Can you log out first? So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively log out. So now I'm logged out. I'll close those windows that I had open. I got my passcode here, so I'm going to put it in. And this takes me to the Event Engine team dashboard, where I am going to put my email address in as my team name. So I'd ask all of you to please put your email address in here. If anyone's having any issues or needs some follow-ups, this will be helpful. For instance, if we have some time left over at the end and someone wants me to walk through on their account, I can actually get into your temporary account on your behalf and help you fix anything you might be stuck with. So please put your email in here and then set that as your team name. And then once you've set your team name, in this case, I put my email, you can actually log right into the AWS console. And to do that, I kind of went through that very quickly. You'll actually click on the AWS console button here. And again, rest assured, everyone, this is all detailed in the workshop instructions for folks that want to follow along with me. Please do so. If you want to carry on your own ahead, also feel free to do that. When you click on AWS console, it brings you to another link to actually open and federate, or rather authenticate into the console. Make a note here, we're in US East 2. Everyone's going to be in there by default, but just keep that in mind. Everything that we are doing today is in that region, US East 2. And then when I click Open AWS Console, it brings me here to the AWS console. And so I'm going to walk through this workshop. Again, these steps I've already I've done. So we put the hash, we put our one-time passcode in here, we set our team name to our email address. Then we can actually log in to the AWS console. And I know, as I noted here, if y'all are logged in to an AWS account previously, then you're going to see this. I had logged out preemptively, so I didn't see this, but it's normal if you see this. Just hit log out and then re-click on the federation step to log into the AWS console here. Cool. So what I'll do is, just to make sure everyone has the hash in case we're missing it, I'm going to drop it in to the chat. And again, this hash is what you put into the Event Engine page to get vended an account. Unless anyone in the chat is not able to get to here, to this section of the workshop with an AWS account, if you're not able to, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on. And then rest assured, after I do some steps, there'll be a small waiting period where I can help unblock anyone that might, if anyone gets stuck. But I would encourage y'all to read instructions very carefully. This workshop, we've been doing it a bunch, and if it doesn't work, it's because either a step was missed or the wrong thing was typed. So just make sure you're reading the instructions very carefully, and you should be 100% okay. All right, so Cloud9. I'll introduce Cloud9 if folks have not used Cloud9. It is a IDE, or integrated development environment, similar to some of y'all's favorite IDEs that you might use out there, except it's fully managed on AWS. It's nice because if you have like a simple laptop or like a tablet, even, like you can run a Cloud9 with a really powerful computer behind it. So you can actually do some really neat development activities. So to get there from the AWS console, I'm actually just going to go to Cloud9. I set up all these accounts for you magically. So all these accounts, if you're in this correct region of Ohio, you're going to see this IDE already set up. So I had it regular size, or I say regular for myself, and then I'm going to make it a little bigger so folks can see easier. I'm going to open this integrated development environment. And when I open it up, you're already going to see a welcome page. And then below that, we're going to see a terminal. And the terminal is how we're going to execute our commands today. We're going to be using the CLI or command line interface to do some of these activities, including pushing the CloudFormation change. And so I am going to go back to the workshop, and we're going to continue forward. And you'll see when you open Cloud9, there's a file system on the left. So that's referring to this file system here. And all your file systems should be in this directory, home EC2 user environment /mod something. Might vary depending on, might be unique to you, but it's going to be mod something. And then everyone's going to have this Amazon DevOps Guru -samples. And so you can expand that directory, and you'll see some more directories here. And I may be able to make this a drop bigger. Hopefully it's easier to see now. I know it's making the terminal hard to, it's kind of cutting, it's really condensing the terminal here, but just for the purposes of seeing the file structure, you all should see this. And this is available on GitHub too. So even if folks are watching this on demand at a later date, we can potentially provide you with the GitHub resource and the workshop to just do on your own AWS account. Today, we have set up resources and done the baselining ahead of it to make sure everyone can easily get an insight today. But folks could also consider doing this offline at a later time as well. So I'm going to open up one of these directories to generate DevOps Guru Insight directory. And I see a CloudFormation stack here that I'm going to open. CFN shops. I'm going to try to make this adjust this a little bit. Only letting me adjust the text of the actual editor and not everything else, but that's okay. We'll roll with this. So I'll go back to the workshop here. And so you can see it's saying, hey, now we've talked about where your terminal is, where your file system is. We're going to scroll down, and then we're going to hit next. And this goes back to the architecture I showed you all previously. So we have the API gateway. You call it. It's invoking a Lambda, which is then calling DynamoDB. And you have these CloudWatch vended metrics that are operational data out of the box coming from these resources that DevOps Guru is going to ingest. And then you also have CloudTrail data, for instance, for your API and event call history. And so it's going to be automatically ingesting that data. And so to actually make this work, we're going to be injecting a high amount of HTTP traffic targeted at that API gateway. So the next step, and now we're actually going to get into the IDE and start making some changes. We're gonna actually modify the CloudFormation, and the element that we're going to modify is our DynamoDB table. So you can see here we have a CloudFormation, part of a CloudFormation stack, because that's a screenshot that's cut off. But you can see where our table is DynamoDB. That's the resource we're referring to. And then we have what is called provision throughput. And right now it's set to 5. We're going to make a change to make it 1. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to be hitting this DynamoDB table by way of Lambda, by way of API gateway. And we want DynamoDB to be constrained a bit. So we're going to reduce this read capacity so that we introduce this constraint into the system. So to do that, I'm going to go to my IDE. And this is on line 15. Another pro tip here is to make sure you save. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm gonna hit Command S, and you can see it went green there. You can also just make the change and then close, or hit File, Save here to make sure that you've saved this read capacity modification. This is important from 5 to 1 before you start injecting traffic. So I've made that change. I've closed it to make sure that it's doubly saved. And now we're ready to push this CloudFormation. So the following command here, it's making sure we're in the right directory, which I already am in, but just to be safe. Then the next command here is actually going to be pushing that CloudFormation. So before I do that, I'll show you the current state of the CloudFormation. So I'm going to do that by querying the stack. And you can see it says the current stack is create complete. And this is referring to our CloudFormation application stack. So it's saying it's in create complete state. That's expected because we did create it previously on your behalf. But we've made a change to it. And now I'm going to run that command where I'm pushing that CloudFormation change. And if we were to go to the console right now, we could see in the console how the CloudFormation is now updating. Just similarly, I can also call it right here from the CLI. And so I'm going to call it, actually do that same query. And now we see update in progress. So we've pushed our CloudFormation update with the reduction of our read capacity. And now that DynamoDB table, that resource is being modified. And what's happening when we modify that resource is it's logging that in CloudTrail. And so this was going to come up in a little bit when we see what's going on in regards to correlating the anomalous metrics along with this deployment that we have just done. So awesome. So we're recommending, let's wait till this is done. So it takes about a minute, maybe 2 minutes. So it looks like it's already done, update complete. So the CloudFormation stack is completely pushed. So now we're ready to inject some traffic. And so what do we have? If you looked at that architecture from the introduction, I'll just open a new tab with that introduction. So to invoke this API, we're targeting the API gateway, and then in turn it invokes this Lambda, which calls the DynamoDB. So what is this API gateway? Like how do we get that? To do that, you could use the console here. Actually, we've made it really easy for you, and it's already the URL unique to your API gateway that we've configured is automatically in this Python script. But I'm taking a step back to help you understand, like, this is what's happening behind the scenes here. So you can see this in the console by going to your CloudFormation stack, going to the outputs tab, and you can see the actual, the API, the URL that you would call to invoke these resources. But I'm going to run this command, and it's going to show that this is the API. And just for fun, I'll open it, and you can see it's, again, the Lambda calls DynamoDB. It's showing us this, the data in the table that is being read from DynamoDB and then being returned back to the person or the customer in this case. So that's just an example of how do you get that API in the back end. So now we're going to start hitting this thing with traffic. So to do that, I'm going to call this script. And this script, like I said, this URL is my URL. Everyone's going to have their own unique URL because you all have been vended accounts that have these resources stood up on your behalf. And this Python script was configured for your specific URL. So we can go ahead and call this Python script. But before we do, I just kind of wanted to walk through what it does. It's actually just doing a while loop. So it's literally just calling the API, getting a response, calling the API, getting a response. So it's just, and I do that in a slow motion, but it's happening really, really fast. And to make it extra fun, we are going to we are going to run this like a few times. So you can see it's like Python send API request dot py ampersand. So it's running this like 4, if I can count correctly, some number of Python scripts in concurrent execution. So just to recap, we had all these resources stood up. We have modified our read capacity of DynamoDB, kind of reducing it artificially. And now we're about to just start blasting this API with traffic. And so all I did was paste that command, and you can see it's starting to get slammed with these responses. So we have about 8 minutes until the top of the hour. And I also acknowledge we have about 38 minutes for the full workshop. So now's a good time. If anyone isn't at this point, please let us know in the chat. We're happy to walk. We got time right now we got some minutes before this insight's going to show up on my account. So I'm happy to help you. If you've already got an insight, if you're already looking into this stuff, that's awesome. Like, feel free to do that. But also for folks that want to follow with me, no problem. If you followed with me and you're at the same point I'm at, and you want to use the restroom or grab some water or coffee and come back, I'm going to be reviewing the insights, most likely around the top of the hour, presuming that that's when the insight comes. Again, this is using ML models here, so I can't say for sure when things happen, but we can roughly expect that time frame. Awesome. It looks like everybody out there is following along beautifully. So that's fantastic news. Again, I'm waiting for my insight. I went ahead and I advanced to the next section of the workshop, where we're going to review the DevOps Guru insight. But before I can dive into that, I will need to have my insight be generated. I do expect this to take another potentially 5 minutes or so. Awesome. So as I expected, I don't see anything yet. And so what's happening behind the scenes here is maybe it would help if I go back to my presentation. So this is this is the sandbox that you all are in today. And so we have, at the bottom here, made this resource change to Amazon DynamoDB, where we're reducing its read capacity from 5 to 1. So we're restraining its ability to read. And when we say read, we're referring to the database grabbing that data. So when I showed you, let me go back to my Chrome. I had another tab here. Actually, I could grab it. This URL is our endpoint. So whenever I call that URL, it's hitting API Gateway here at the top. And then it's invoking this Lambda function, our compute capability, which in turn is calling the DynamoDB table to read the data that you see here. And then Lambda's grabbing that data from DynamoDB and responding back to the user. And so in this case, because we're hitting it with so much traffic, and in particular, because we've reduced the read capacity of DynamoDB, when you get down the line of API Gateway to Lambda to DynamoDB, DynamoDB is going to start, it's going to feel restrained. It's going to have struggle to address all these requests. And therefore, DynamoDB will be throttled. Lambda will, because of it's like a cascading situation. Lambda's throwing errors. You got latency. Your customers might have some latency issues. API gateway is getting 500 errors. So in this case, when I queried the API, it worked, but that wasn't guaranteed because of all this chaos going on. And imagine that when you're paged at 2 a.m. And this is a very simple serverless architecture here, but imagine, realistic production workloads. I mean, there could be a lot of resources involved. And, you're not sure what's wrong. Like what is the symptom? What is the root cause? Now, in our case, we're following through the whole workshop. We modified DynamoDB, but put yourself in the shoes of the person that is trying to fix this, and maybe you weren't the person that modified DynamoDB, and so you have no idea what could possibly be going on here. And so I'll go pivot back over to our dashboard. And we have an insight. So right on time, we're about a minute to the top of the hour. So it took maybe 7 minutes or so to get to this. And I know folks on demand can easily scroll back in time, but for folks that are listening live, you saw before I refreshed, everything was 0 here. Everything was good. And it showed our stacks, our CloudFormation stacks, as green and healthy. Now that we've injected this traffic, now that there's all these errors, now we're seeing an unhealthy stack, and we're seeing an impacted application, and DevOps Guru, and we have a reactive insight. So now that we're at the top of the hour, folks, if you grab some coffee or water while you're waiting for your insight, welcome back. In my account, following the workshop steps, I have an insight, and I'm ready to dive in. So going back to the workshop, this is where we left off, reviewing the DevOps Guru insight. And so it talks about how the insight's divided into these different sections. So let's take a closer look at those. And we'll start with our aggregated metrics. So we'll click on our reactive insight here. And when we click on that, we only have a reactive today based on reacting to that problematic circumstance that we generated. And so you see the name, which is based on the, in this case, we know it's DynamoDB that's at fault. But if you had no idea the context here and you're paged at 2 a.m., you dive in and you immediately see, oh, there's some DynamoDB read throttle. That's anomalous. That might have something to do with what's going on. Oh, this is a high severity issue and it just started. So let me click on it and see what's going on. Conveniently, DevOps Guru is going to give you a time frame of what is happening. It's going to show you the impacted application stack. It's going to have a view recommendations link right here. So if you just quickly wanted to say, like, what do I do about this? I need to act now. I'm potentially losing tens of thousands of dollars a minute or a second, and I need to fix this. So you can click on view recommendations to bring you there immediately. But before I dive into recommendations, I wanted to discuss, this principle that we've been talking about of there's all this noise and there's all these alarms, and how do we surface through the noise what matters? So right now we have 3 aggregated metrics that are associated with this insight. For folks following with me live, you may have 2 or more aggregated metrics here. Again, because of the fact it's using ML, and because in this case, I'm just running a Python script that loops, your results can vary, but we are expecting, particularly because this is the root cause, these specific DynamoDB aggregated metrics. So it's throttling requests, and you're having a read throttle, or you're having sustained read throttle events. And these in particular are anomalous. But we're also I mean, that we know is our root cause, but imagine we have no idea the context here and we're trying to figure out what's going on. There's also a Lambda error. But we could also see, and we might see, because it's continually analyzing the streams of data, and I'm not stopping this script. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to let it keep rolling. We might see some more anomalous metrics come through. So for instance, let's take a look at our read throttle or our read throttle or our throttle requests. And so it's going to tell us this is part of this stack. In this case, it's my serverless stack. And then it's going to tell us the resource type in question. In this case, it's a DynamoDB AWS resource type. And then it's also going to show you exactly like, okay, so that's a DynamoDB, but I might have hundreds of those. It's going to specify the exact DynamoDB that is in question here. And you could conveniently click on it and bring, for instance, bring you to the DynamoDB console to take a look and explore that resource. But back to the workshop, it's kind of walking you through, that process. In this case, in this screenshot, there was 4. There's also an API gateway 5xx. We might see that come through, but also how the insight actually works. So there's a very nice timeline view here. So we're seeing this over time, what's been happening, and this is a chart that's able to describe this for you. And so, for instance, I can click on the read throttle, and it's actually going to dive deeper. And this is going back to our CloudWatch vendor metrics. So when you turn on that DynamoDB, it's going to automatically have these types of metrics that are generated and ingested by DevOps Guru. So here is where you can actually see, okay, so I started hitting the API gateway around here, and it kept going. So we kept getting throttled, and we can kind of see a nice chart that helps you understand that, as well as this is coming from CloudWatch. So again, the single pane of glass to help you reduce that mean time to resolution can also bring you conveniently right to the CloudWatch page that you want to potentially dive deeper into. And next, we have our relevant events. So this goes to our, actually might be helpful to pull up a visual. So over here, we have CloudFormation. So in this nice visual, what we're seeing is that we've made this CloudFormation change that is showing up in CloudTrail. And we're targeting our DynamoDB table that's having a problem. So, or we're targeting a DynamoDB table, and that happens to be the one that's having a problem. So DevOps Guru, it's using its ML powered capabilities to assess that not only is this DynamoDB table producing anomalous metrics, and it's part of the same infrastructure as this Lambda and other resources, but we have a relevant event here, and it's a deployment. And the deployment is the deployment that we all did. So we all made a change to our DynamoDB CloudFormation configuration to reduce that read capacity, and then we pushed it, and it led us to this situation now. So DevOps Guru is picking that up and saying, hey, now I'm seeing all this anomalous behavior, but by the way, you modified this resource. And you can see right here in the timeline. So it's giving you, this is the timeline of today's date, and you can see the timestamps here in increments of 5 minutes. We pushed this change, and then you can see the insight started, give or take, 10 minutes after that CloudFormation change. So it's another helpful thing. And it also links to the operational event that encompasses that. And so that can be helpful to figure out, okay, in this case, maybe it was just simply the configuration change that might be the problem. And so that takes us along to our recommendation section here. And so the simplest solution here, and we all know because we created the circumstance, but imagine if you hadn't and you're just coming in without any knowledge that someone modified this table, and that's what led to these anomalous metrics. We can roll back this DynamoDB table. It's going to link you right. So again, it's very nice that this solution can aggregate anomalous metrics, dynamically adjust thresholds based on your patterns, associate relevant events, but that's not actionable necessarily. So this is one of the nice ways. I mean, this is great info, but like, what do we do now? Like, I want to know what to do to fix this. And so here we have an actual resource on how to do this to make it easy for you. And so that's kind of an overview of what an insight looks like, how to take a look at your aggregated metrics, how to understand how relevant events were, and recommendations. If anyone has any questions, I should have mentioned this at the very beginning. Like, if y'all have any questions at any point, feel free to just post those in the chat. I'm happy, or Alyssa, my colleague here, is happy to address those. Anything about AIOps, anything about DevOps Guru, we're happy to help. So yeah, so this final segment is taking us into the graphed anomalies, and I kind of gave you a little hint of what that looks like here, but there is a section at the top of this, and I'm gonna make this a little bigger, and kind of quickly or scroll down. So in case folks couldn't read it before, at least it's on demand for people to see later, in case the previous screen share wasn't as legible. Okay, so now that I did that, let me go back to my size. And then I'm going to click on our graphed anomalies. So as opposed to our aggregated metrics, our graphed anomalies is taking those aggregated metrics that have anomalous operational data, and it's providing you a graph view. So a lot of especially ops folks, they want to see what's up with the data and how is it trending over time. So here you can see the different data points that DevOps Guru is capturing related to this event. You can see the different errors. So that's another neat mechanism. Again, these are pulled right from CloudWatch, and you have, like, for instance, I can click on this and take me right to the Lambda. I can click on that and take me right to the DynamoDB table. It's a pretty convenient way to see what's going on. I'm just curious here if we got any additional metrics. So yeah, now you see I've cut the script going intentionally just to see if it's going to pick up more data. And I acknowledge that this data is just additional anomalous data. We know DynamoDB is the root cause, but we don't want to leave any anomalous metrics behind, because ultimately we're empowering you to view the different aggregated metrics that are anomalous and make a decision about what could be the problem. We see now we went from 3 to now we have 9 aggregated metrics, because these are pulling in, because we saw now, whoa, there's a lot of 5xx errors, but our recommendations are still the same. So you still are seeing this, hey, right at the top, roll back that DynamoDB. That is probably your circumstance here. You might want to consider that. But now we have more metrics and data to look at. So similarly, you have the CloudFormation stack. You have the resource type, in this case, API gateway. And you can click on the timeline view. You can even click on the graph view, and you can see what's going on with these 5xx. It looks like we had a peak of a lot of. So it was actually, it's funny, when I showed you all the REST endpoint, I hit it and got that data back. There was, at that time, there could have been a 50% chance I would have gotten a 5xx, but I got some data back. So that was neat. But you can see how this is trending that way. Awesome. All right. So that is, you could, if you choose, you could actually put this DynamoDB table back to its original configuration. As I mentioned, you all that have been vended an account you're more than welcome to continue sandboxing with DevOps Guru relating to this workshop. I think it's open. The accounts are open for the next, at least the next day or two. You're more than welcome to do that. I think if you go next, you're going to get the conclusion here. Before I wrap things up, there's some things I wanted to cover. I often, folks, when we're doing this workshop, I get feedback. This is neat to get hands-on with this. How can I leverage DevOps Guru for my workloads? And so I'm gonna discuss that briefly. And so I'll go back to my presentation. And so because AIOps is fully managed AIOps solution is really valuable when it's in particular your critical systems, right? I mean, this solution's just ingesting operational metrics to look for anomalies and help you reduce that mean time to resolution, help you improve your operational excellence and availability. So I'd recommend try this out on a production workload. It's not going to modify any of your resources. It's only going to be viewing the operational data to make these intelligent recommendations. You're going to get the most value out of it. And I say that because our pre-productions or our QA or our test environments, it's very difficult to exactly replicate a true production, a true customer interactive experience. However, you're more than welcome to, if you prefer to dip your toes in with your test or QA or pre-production environments, by all means, go ahead and give that a shot. But I would recommend you assess like what workloads matter to the business. And so when you do enable it, which we got some time, I'm gonna walk you through that process. There is the baselining period required. So this can be some hours, or it could be 24 to 48 hours of baselining. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we're understanding your environment and what is normal, so that because anomalous is how we define anomalous behavior is dependent on the workload, what kind of normal operational data we see, what kind of patterns or trends, like maybe Mondays in the afternoon are really intense, but Sunday at 2 a.m., you typically have little to no traffic. That's one of the nice things about Amazon DevOps Guru is it's able to assess those dynamic changes and adapt those to its learning and its pattern. So if you, for instance, you add a new resource, automatically it's going to start establishing a baseline. If you remove it, automatically it's no longer ingesting that operational data because it doesn't exist. If you have a new customer experience, like a huge spike in your workload, sure, you might see something. If it's way wicked different than baseline and it's causing perhaps an outage, you're going to be potentially notified of a production down or a high latency. However, if you scale that out and you appropriately address it, and then that's like the new norm is you went from here and now the new norm is 10x, DevOps Guru will learn that. And then we'll see, oh, this is the new norm. It's a lot different than it used to be, but now I understand what is the pattern. Keep that baseline in mind and that dynamic capability in mind. And then, of course, via the insights, I do recommend you configure some kind of automated system, either SNS or integrate with one of your current ticketing or paging systems. So with that, how do we turn on this solution? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an account that doesn't have DevOps Guru enabled. And I'm going to show you what it looks like to get started. If anyone has any questions about the workshop or DevOps Guru, feel free to drop those in the chat. Awesome. So what I did was I logged into a different AWS account, and I'm in the Singapore region here because this solution is region-based. So when you enable it, it is specific to a region. If you click, since we're on the DevOps Guru page, if you click on regions, you can see the supported regions that we have today. If you're listening out there and you operate in a different region and you'd like to see DevOps Guru in that region, please let us know. You can drop it in the chat or in the survey at the end. You can maybe add that as a comment. That would be super helpful. We would love to continue growing this solution. So the more feedback we get, the better we can assess the direction to head. But these are the regions supported today. I'm in Singapore because I don't have DevOps Guru enabled. And so this is what you would see if you were to check out DevOps Guru. And I'm going to walk through how to turn it on. It's pretty easy. You just click enable. But if you want to tweak its configuration regarding like whether you use tags or CloudFormation or all resources, I'll quickly show you. Again, that's also really easy, but I'll show you what that looks like. So from the console, I have Amazon DevOps Guru here as a recently visited, but if you don't, you could type it in here in the console search and click on it. And it's going to take you to this page. And you can see DevOps Guru. I'll call out the free tier. So this is, again, a no-brainer. Just give it a shot and see how it's working for you. We do have, for the first 3 months, 7,200 resource hours free of charge. So that's definitely something to consider. If you do click on this pricing page, it can walk you through how you pay for the solution, and you can see the different resources required. So there's 2 different groups, Group A and Group B. I also get this often asked, like what resources does DevOps Guru support in terms of AIOps for monitoring? And so this list right here from this page gives you that list. So these are the different resources that are capable of being monitored. And then there's an example, some examples here of what it might look like to figure out how much it would cost. But additionally, from this interface here, there is a cost estimator tool as well. So for free, you could just either click, hey, I want to monitor this specific CloudFormation stack, or I want to monitor all resources, or I want to monitor these specific tagged resources. You can estimate how much it's going to cost by using this interface. So if anyone's curious about that, you could also check it out. I'm going to go to the main page here and show you how to get started with it. So clicking the Get Started button, you can see how DevOps Guru works, all of which we've talked about today. And then you're going to scroll down, and in this case, I have our organization view. So let me get to. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go this. I'm going to do it this way. It's going to show an error because and you would see an error if you did it on yours too, because this temporary account we've given you only has access to Ohio. So I'm going to go to Singapore, even though I don't have. It's gonna let me get here, but it might throw a banner at the top saying I can't do stuff. But that's okay because we're just showing how to get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit Get Started here. And again, I have this is a temporary AWS account that I'm using here, which we don't have privileges for Singapore, but I'm just showing you how this works so you can disregard that banner. So again, how DevOps Guru works, we've already talked about. Amazon DevOps Guru analysis coverage. So here is by default, you have all resources to be analyzed. Again, going back to our, bringing you the insight when you need it, you can configure SNS here. As I mentioned, by default, it's all AWS resources, but you can hit choose later, and then I'll show you what it would look like to modify your boundary. So by default, it's gonna do all resources, all those resources that I showed you in the other page that are capable of being monitored. If you have those on your account, they would be monitored. But if you want it to be specific, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to our Ohio region where I know my temporary AWS account will work. And then I'm going to go to settings from the left. And here, I hadn't configured SNS on this one, so I could. But if you go to analyzed resources, this is where you can edit that coverage. So again, this solution is easy to use. You turn it on. It's going to do everything in terms of monitoring and bringing these insights to you on your behalf. But some folks want to modify what it actually is monitoring. And so that's where you can adjust your analysis coverage. And so again, by default, it's all resources. But let's say you wanted specific CloudFormation stacks. So you could say, I want to monitor all CloudFormation stacks by clicking on that radio button here, and then clicking the top checkbox to check all the stacks. If you wanted to, I don't really want this stack, but I want the other three, you could also do that. Another mechanism that customers use is the tags, and AWS tags are pretty popular. So this is another mechanism that folks can use to aggregate and specify either specific resources to monitor, or just having that aggregation capability of these tags are associated with this application. Fantastic. If there are any questions about the workshop or how to get started with DevOps Guru, I would love to hear it. We do have a few minutes left, so I really just want to thank everybody for joining. It's a really cool opportunity. This is my first DevOps.com session. So again, thanks Cody for helping host today. And I really it goes back to my beginning of what's in my heart as a former engineer. I really love making people's lives better. So I genuinely look forward to you all getting the opportunity to use this fully managed AIOps solution on AWS and seeing the results, seeing those that heavy lift come off your shoulders and coming to potentially a production down circumstance and being able to fix it a lot quicker than you would otherwise. So I really look forward to you all giving it turning it on and then communicate back. I would love to hear. I know Alyssa, she's on here. She would love to hear from you too. I have and I apologize, Alyssa, I didn't put your name here, but feel free to add your info in the chat if you'd like. But this is my LinkedIn. This is my email. Feel free to connect with me. Follow me on LinkedIn. When we do more workshops, so today you got to do a reactive hands-on. We are building more workshops. So we're going to be, as those come about and those are planned and we deliver those, I will post those on LinkedIn so y'all can see if, for instance, you want to do a proactive, or we have the relational database service, RDS, performance insights. So we launched at reInvent DevOps Guru for RDS. So if you're using MySQL or Postgres, you could potentially use DevOps Guru for RDS. We have proactive insights. So these are all some potential workshops that we're building out, and we're growing the service. So we'd love also just to hear in general feedback. So what you like, what you don't like. The QR code here should be a survey. I would love to hear from you. So I'm pasting the survey link in the chat. Please fill out the survey. Your feedback is really important to us. Whether you have good or bad things to say, please don't hold back. I would love to hear your experience today, because you have my commitment that I will take your feedback and I will use that to make these things better in the future for everybody. So you're actually a big help with that. So I want to thank you. Please fill out the survey. And yeah, I know we just got a couple minutes. So I feel like everything's been addressed in the chat, but if there's any lingering questions, I got a minute here. I'm happy to answer. Awesome. Well, I'll take that as everybody had a great experience with the workshop and was able to get hands-on today. So again, I thank you for your time. Alyssa, is there anything you would like to share before we close out?
No, this is great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And I appreciate everyone too that joined our workshop. We hope that you got something out of this and learned a little bit more about AIOps in general and also DevOps Guru. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We definitely want to get your feedback too in that survey. So let us know how this went for you. And if you're interested to learn more, our team is more than happy to get you started with this and to see where this can fit into your pipeline and solution. So we're here for you. And yeah, thanks again, Jonathan. This is great.
Excellent. Awesome. So I'm going to post, this is just another URL. So this is a blog that inspired this workshop. So again, we did share out the workshop URL. So folks that maybe are going to listen to this an hour from now on demand, you can still be vended an account. So you'll have the hash and the event engine URL. You can get that account. Please put your emails, the team name, and then follow the workshop steps. And then if folks see this way down the line and want to make sure that they have a static page that has this solution here, we have the blog that inspired this, which walks through all these steps similarly. Cody, I see we're at time, so I'll let you close things out. Can you confirm that folks on demand will be able to see, for instance, they can get to the workshop and event engine hash?
That's right. Yeah, we'll get that information distributed with the on-demand.
Awesome. Yep, and be mindful that will expire in a day or two. So if y'all want to check that out, get on it. But otherwise, if it's been some days and you're seeing this on demand, you'll want to check out the blog.
Great. Well, Jonathan, Alyssa, thank you both for joining us today. And Jonathan, I especially appreciate you running us through the DevOps Guru and AIOps today. So really, thank you guys so much for providing so much insight into the platform.
Thank you, Cody. It was a lot of fun. And thank you, everybody out there. It was such a pleasure to work with you today. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. And I'd like to quickly remind everyone that this session was recorded. So you should be receiving an email shortly with a link to access the recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and just be sure to look in the on-demand section. So I do still have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give out. Our first winner is Jasmine W. Our second winner is Theodore D. Our third winner is Niall H. And our fourth and final winner is Norbert P. So congratulations to the 4 of you. Please keep an eye on your inbox to claim your gift card. And if you don't see that email, check your spam folder. I would like to thank AWS for making today's workshop possible. And before we close, I would like to thank all of our audience members for joining us. Thank you so much for being here with us. Please take a minute to fill out Jonathan's survey. It's posted in the chat. It's also posted down below the viewer. But otherwise, we do hope to see you at an upcoming Techstrong Learning webinar or workshop. Everyone, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Congrats to the winners. Take care.